All right, hi everyone. Today's lecture gonna be keeping it short because I know you're doing your own revision and we're ending the term on exam, last day of exam, right? So let's get this over with. All right, today's lesson will be on portrayal of youth in media. So we're actually coming to the end of the youth idea, again, the idea of society and family, and I'm gonna help you link it, okay, to the big idea of media, which will be covered in further detail next time. Right? So, first we're gonna start off with the idea of bias, right? And you might have come across this many times, right? There is inherently a bias against youth in today's media, right? And these are some of the opinions by youth councils all over the world. Okay, so they say that youths are being discriminated against or misrepresented through strongly entrenched media practices. Basically, they believe that youths, okay, are being portrayed in this very terrible light, okay, even though uh, it may not necessarily be true, right, and even though it may not be relevant anymore today, but because this is how youth have always been portrayed in the media in the media for a good century or more, right, this still continues on until today, right, and excuse me, and especially when we talk about criminal activity, right, there is a topical bias that chooses to focus on youth crimes, especially. Or you ever heard of this delinquent? We use the word delinquent, okay, this youth, this child, this boy, all right, that did this, they vandalized this, they stole something in the minimart and stuff like that. There's always some form of media bias against youth in the idea of criminal activity. And the voice of youth, you realize, are notably missing from these few ideas. Education policies. When was the last time you ever heard your teacher, your school, or the Ministry of Education actively taking up all the policies or all the ideas that you suggest to them? I'm not talking about stupid ideas, right? I'm talking about actual solutions that may work. When was the last time they actively and consistently accepted these suggestions? Same thing for jobs, right? Young people are not just students; they're also perhaps in the employment sector as well, right? And you realize that job policies are often against youth, right? Inexperienced youth, especially, your internship. That's why you see so many youths being exploited online. Okay, not online, sorry, by their employers, especially for unpaid interns. Same thing for recreational activity, right? And last but not least, the achievements of young people are often basically trivialized or sometimes even ignored. Right? You say, oh, you're still young. These achievements mean nothing, right? In the grand scale of things, you're still a long way to go. Blah 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 blah. So you see, the voice of youth are missing on these ideas. And like I was saying just now, the media bias portrays youth in a form of what we call a dichotomous image, which means one or the other. Okay, you're either good or bad, evil, innocent. No, you have no hope, or you're a high achiever. You're abnormal, or you're a traditionalist, or you're apathetic in policy or politics, or you're overly ambitious. You realize there's no in between. For the media, you are either this or that. You are not on a spectrum, right? And this unfairly represents youth in a many different ways, right? It misrepresents what youth actually stand for, and therefore it gives this stereotypical image of a youth, right? It actually comes from media. And so, how does the media affected you? How has it affected youth, right? First and foremost, it promotes identity issues, right? You realize that media, not just uh conventional media, but especially nowadays social media, you realize they glamorize the pretty, skinny, athletic, popular, smart, handsome, right? All these overtly positive characteristics, right? And you can see that based on who are your influencers on social media, who are the ones that have thousands of followers. Not to say that followers mean anything, just that it shows us is the indicator of who has or who holds the popularity. Okay, and those that don't fit the criteria are outcasted. Right? One example of this: people who do well in school are considered nerds or teachers' pets. Right? And this is an example of outcasting. Right? That if you don't fit the conventional medium of youth or conventional characteristic of youth, which we'll get into later, okay, you are immediately outcasted from the generation. And the problem is that this so-called cookie cutter stereotype means that everybody must be exactly the same, right? When you cut cookie, the mold, everything should be the same, right? But these stereotypes actually tell children, especially young children who are impressionable, that they have to do certain things, look certain way, in order to get the approval and friendship of other cool kids. Fitting in. Right? That's why you see a lot of people, especially teenagers nowadays, changing their looks. Right? Changing their looks to what? Maybe the so-called cool kids in school? Or maybe they're changing a look to fit the social media trend, which will make them look all more trendy, more in tune with the teenage life and stuff like that. Okay, and that is the problem with media and cookie cutter stereotypes. Is it true that youths are all like this? No. Actually, you realize around you even, there are plenty of youths who are intelligent, thoughtful, and care about the people and the world around them. Right? But you don't hear much about them because there is nothing newsworthy of them. Would the news much rather cover things like, fights, vandalism, and stuff like that, instead of some kid getting an A in English. Well, I guess we join that as a comparison. Okay, and you can see that. Okay, I'm not talking about the mainstream news. Okay, because some of you might argue that mainstream news like Channel News Asia, Straight Time always have these commentary articles or this spotlight articles about youths who are doing great things for elderly in terms of climate change and stuff like that. No, I'm not talking about that. Those are what we call sanctioned media, right? Media that are supposed to do or supposed to have a certain inherent purpose or value in it. But what we're talking about, the indicator of the truth of what society wants comes from things like your tabloids. Okay? Tabloids, which are these lifestyle entertainment so-called youth news lah. Okay? And I don't know if you all know tabloids like the physical books, but today's tabloids might look something like your Instagram. There are some accounts like Ashley Follow All and stuff like that. Okay, that post random things. Sometimes you see images or posts about students fighting at a void deck, fighting in a toilet, smoking, vaping, stuff like that. That gives you a true representation of what society values. Because you ask somebody, which would they rather read? An article about the climate change, you fighting climate change, or an Instagram article with a video of students fighting in the toilet? Which one would you want to watch? And that will tell you the true value, okay, and the true perception that society holds. Okay, and we were talking about youth and crime, right? And you realize that the media has essentially established this relationship between youth and crime, right? Which resulted actually all across the world. There are many people who have been surveyed to say that they're feeling unsafe in the presence of young people. Okay, maybe not so much in Singapore. Okay, but if you go to other countries, for example, in New York City, right, in the suburbs area, right, if you see a bunch of youths wearing their beanies, stereotypical outfit, I'm just saying a stereotypical outfit, jacket, denim, and beanies, right, walking towards you, I can tell you more than 80% of people would feel threatened or unsafe. Why? Because they are related to gang violence or delinquency. Either one of these two. Okay, and this is why this exists. Okay, and according to the OECD is a very important organization that you should be looking at. Okay, I think it's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. if I'm not wrong. I might be wrong. Please go and Google. All right. OECD in 2019 said that young people in public space is often construed as a dangerous and disruptive act. Sorry, I missed out a word. Leading to greater surveillance of youth. So governments today are playing especially large, especially large attention on the youth, and oftentimes this has resulted in a lot of clashes between authority and youth. Yeah, so these are the characteristics that the media portray youth as, popular media especially. I'm not talking about these sanctioned media, right? Popular media. Rebellious, disrespectful, lazy, binge drinkers, drug takers, just, you realize it's just human scum lah, basically, right? And popular media also takes this opportunity, okay, to hinge on certain so-called youth situations to appeal to the youth of today, especially when it comes to, wanting to get the eyeballs of youth. So be it TikTok, be it Hollywood films, be it TV shows, whatever, okay, they all often hinge on this kind of thing, especially for what we call coming of age films. Coming of age is exactly as it's implied. It's a film that talks about teenagers or children growing up, adulting. Okay, I wouldn't go as far as to say adulting, but I would say growing up. That process of growing up. That's what we call coming to age film. Sorry, coming of age film. Okay, and you realize more often than not, it falls to these few categories. I'm not saying all, but I'm saying a lot. Okay, high school parties, alcohol use, blah blah blah, relationships, clique forming, parental conflict, sex and virginity. These few ideas. You go on Netflix, you go on to IMDb, for example, and you go and look films that are targeted towards youth. What is the synopsis? You realize more often than not they will fall under one of these categories. But do you realize that all these are actually negative, at least in terms of our perception? And it's not an accident. This is media bias. Again, even if it's in film, even if it's in comedy, it is still a form of media bias, right? It gives you also a false perception on what your life should resemble. I don't think every single teenager in every country in the world that has access to these films necessarily go to parties, necessarily drink alcohol, necessarily lose their virginity at an early age. I don't think all of them do. But you realize the media is perceiving and showing people that this is what happens. And you know better than anyone that is not true. Right? And this has resulted in things like changes of social norm. Okay, because especially this generation growing up with stuff like American films, American uh, teenagers, you realize are much more liberal than us here in the East, right? And the idea of prom actually came from America, right, over to Singapore, right? And based on my secondary school students, their impression of prom is definitely very different from what we actually deliver here in Singapore, and that is because what they see on American television shows, right? And again, it may not be obvious, but there is a subconscious media bias here. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a few examples, a bit old, okay, boomer, but doesn't matter lah. Okay, it's just an example. I will not encourage you to do media. I'm not gonna tell you what to do or not to do, but uh, if you're not sure, I recommend not to do it. Simple as that. Okay, these movies are from Hollywood. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a 1986 film. I wasn't even born, right? It's very old. But it's basically about high school soccer. Mean Girls, I think some of you might have heard. 2004. It's about this girl going to a new school and then getting bullied by the new cliques of teenage girls. Juno is an excellent funny film as well, but it talks about something that is quite deep, which is about teenage pregnancy, abortion, adoption, and general adulting. Okay, so it's a great film. Please, if you have the time during June, go and look at it. Easy A, lesser known, but it's from 2010. Basically, it's about this high school student that lies a lot to advance their social standing in the school, lah, basically. It's not just America. This The Catch-Up Effect is a comedy show from Sweden in 2004, and it's about this young girl who has too much to drink, and she faints and blackout and stuff, and end up there's this group of immature guys that take photo of her and basically show these compromising photos of her at school. And it is comedy, believe it or not. Okay, but the more liberal nature of Western and Scandinavian countries like Sweden. Okay, they actually in this film they actually openly show LGBT related or mature scenes amongst the youth, things that will be highly censored in Eastern countries like Singapore. Okay, so you realize it's not youth. All these movies, the synopsis that I quoted, you realize they're all negative. Too much to drink, immaturity, teenage pregnancy, lying, cruelty, slacking. All these are negative connotation. Negative perception, sorry. Okay, other media. Okay, I'm just gonna wrap up really quickly. Other media like MVs, music videos, right? They have been proven to desensitize viewers to violence. They have been proven to increase the approval of teenage relationships and premarital sex. And indeed, 75% of MVs contain sexually implicit or explicit materials, and more than 50% contains violence. And this is research that has been done. Okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? MVs, especially for today music, I'm not talking about olden day MVs, I'm talking about today, current MVs. These ideas, right, are being absorbed by youth, and they take it as a normative idea. And I'll talk more about normative idea in a moment. Okay, but this is something that changes their mindset. Okay, so it's not just media bias anymore. It is also the direct effect of current day media that affects youth as well. According to Stanford University in 2018, MVs have, quote, profound negative effects on adolescents' normative explanations about these few things. Normative expectation is basically the idea that this thing is normal. So if you realize, if your MVs, if your video and your media show youth that fighting, using weapons, shooting people is a good way to resolve conflict, then they will grow up and take it as a norm, take it as something that is normal and accepted and actually should be done. That is what we mean by normative expectation. They're going to take it face value and take it as something that should be emulated. And of course, that is a highly dangerous thing. Okay? But again, issues are not so simple. This is just one of many factors. There are a whole bunch of things to consider before you just criticize the media as well. Okay, so that's for your consideration. Music lyrics are something that we have been conducting more and more research into. Okay, you realize they're becoming a lot more explicit, right? Explicit in terms of these few things: sex, drugs, violence, and it's becoming more and more outright. Okay, so they're actually just literally explicating it in the lyrics instead of in the past, maybe a few years ago, where it would probably be innuendos, more implied meaning instead. Okay, but like I said, this is still being investigated and researched. Social media. This one I don't need to touch on it too much because I'm sure you all understand. According to the Lancet and OECD, a survey of children in 28 countries identified poor sleep, online harassment, self-esteem, and body image as key pathway from social media use to mental health problems. Last time I talked about social media's effect, right? I talked about things like bigorexia. I talked about things like anorexia. I talk about things like anxiety, right? And body image issues. Social media. Okay? Again, it's that generalizing and glamorizing of perfect body shapes. Skinny, pretty, handsome, muscular. These, expected, so-called expected and sought after body shapes. And that in itself causes a lot of people. And in fact, this is not the majority. These perfect body shape don't belong to the majority. It is the minority. But it causes a lot of the majority to start to feel insecure about themselves. And leading to anxiety issues, leading to mental health issues. Okay, and that is the effect of social media. Okay, so again, this is not no more about media bias. This is now about media to consumer effect. Okay, or actually, I should call it consumer to media to consumer effect. What I post can affect somebody else, right? And social media is the platform for me to do so. Not that it is, uh, not that it is something that people set out to do. It is just something that happens eventually. Yeah. Okay, so you can read this. I think it's my last slide. In England, a survey of 500,000 children, which is the largest ever survey done, okay, put mental health as their one concern, with many girls reporting online lies create anxiety, and especially for girls. Yeah, girls are, according to research, are more adversely affected than boys in this matter, and this is supported by research. Okay, and the idea is that it has always been the case because of misogyny, right? It has always been the case because of misogyny. But we won't get into that issue right now. All you need to know for this term is that social media has this profound impact. Can be good, but mostly bad. At least according to the portrayal of youth. So in conclusion, these few terms are what you will commonly see talking about media and youth. Media pandering, sensationalism, actual realities, and confirmation bias. Okay, media pandering is basically appealing to the media, right? Doing everything that you can to appeal to the media and get that information across. Sensationalism is the focus on the things that sell the most, right? So instead of saying, "Oh, I got a," okay, I just give you a simple example. Sensationalism. A dog was stuck on a tree. The firefighters let the dog down. Okay, basic. That's actually what happened. Sensationalism would be like, oh, dog is stuck on tree for 14 hours without food, without shelter, without water. Firefighters show up in slow pace and have major difficulties in deploying the ladders, slowly but steadily getting to the dog. Something like that, essentially sensationalism, right? Exaggerating certain things. Okay, it might not be always bad, but a lot of times it is because that is what sells. Okay, media is a business. Okay, and this applies to both both the what did I say just now, both the traditional media, okay, and also the media that is more community driven. All right, so things like your tabloids both rely on money, right? They need to sell their newspapers, they need to sell their articles. Who's gonna read a boring article? Nobody. Right? So sensationalism is what sells articles. And this is especially relevant for your tabloids. Okay, this is how they earn money. Actual realities, I already talked about it. Okay, confirmation bias, this term might be new to you. It is basically the act of taking out information and believing only the information that fits our current understanding. Okay, which basically is the idea of I know, okay, I believe 2 plus 2 equals to 3. Okay? I have all the information in the world that tell me 2 plus 2 equals to 4. But I see one article that says 2 plus 2 equals to 3. I take that article, I put it into my brain, and I use it as confirmation that 2 plus 2 is indeed equal to 3. Confirmation bias. Okay? Cherry picking information. Okay? So why am I saying this? It's because, generally speaking, youth are not positively glamorized in the media. Go and look, go and research on your own. I can assure you that there is this trend. Okay? Unless you're like Malala or your Greta Thunberg, even Greta Thunberg you realize is being criticized. Okay? Or other youth leaders, like, you'll never be portrayed in a positive light, I tell you. For sure. And this problem will continue, and in fact it is a deadly cycle because the portrayal of youth in a negative light will only encourage more and more youth and adolescents to follow that mindset, and eventually it will never stop. Alright, and that in itself is the issue with portrayal of youth in media. Okay, very quickly before I end, for your GP exam, tips for example consolidation, start with a big issue. Okay, so issues like art, science and tech, media, governance, stuff like that. Issue, this is what we mean by issue. Within each of these issues, go and find big ideas. So for example, in youth, we already said big ideas like portrayal of youth in media. We've said things like generation gap. We said things like teenage marriage. We said things like youth crime and rights. Okay, these are what I mean by big ideas. Okay, so based on the big idea, I want you to search for examples based on countries or types of countries. Okay, so it can be big idea, can be teenage marriage, right? And then I gave you last time so many lists of example. In third world countries, this is happening, but in first world countries, this is also happening. So do you like that? Okay, get your big idea first, and then go and find different examples from different countries, different regions, and different type of countries. Okay, and then list out all these examples that you can use, especially for your context. Okay, you can use point form, you can use the example grid to sort into community, national, whatever. Up to you. Whatever works for you, do it. This is your exam. It is not the teacher's exam. It is not SCAB's exam. It is your exam. Okay, and then keep in mind that national level examples will often give you insight into society or community level examples. You realize national issue will always affect society and community. Okay, so start with countries. It will be effective. Okay. So with that, this is an additional lecture for this week. Okay, there will be one more lecture tomorrow, but I may not publish it on time, so I see what I can do. Okay, but anyways, I wish you all the best for your revision and your last day of school tomorrow, technically. All right, last day of lessons. All right, so I wish you all the best for your revision and all the best. Do well and put in your best effort for Friday's exam. All right, I'll see you when I see you.